Hello again, Bernie Miklasz with you, back for another Bernie Miklasz show here on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for all of the great audience support, page views, video views have been up. They've been great all along, but they've been going up, and I like that. Appreciate it, and thanks again. Can't thank you enough. We have a lot to get to today. I'm going to do another Bernardo video on the Nolan Arenado situation. This one taking maybe a little bit of a different slant. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But first of all, I just want to remind you tonight, I'm doing this, man. I'm not giving you much leeway here, but as I'm recording this, it's a little after 4 o'clock. But tonight, as I mentioned yesterday, from 6 to 10 on December the 19th, 6 to 10 Central Time, I will be with the Dealing the Cards fellas who do the great live stream once a week, Dealing the Cards. It's outstanding. Add it to your playlist as far as Cardinals related videos. So I'll be with my friends there from Dealing the Cards at 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. Or you can go to the YouTube channel called Dealing the Cards. And again, that'll be there for you even if you don't watch it live. You can go back and look at it because we'll have some really great guests, including Josh Jacobs and Andrew Kwan, from Sandy McMillan, all of them from the Dealing the Cards YouTube channel, along, with Kareem Hawk, who's part of that. He's a really terrific prospect expert on the Cardinals. Derek Gould's going to be there live with us, the outstanding baseball writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Jeff Jones, who covers the Cardinals for the Belleville News-Democrat, does a heck of a job. He'll be there. We'll have Will Leach on live stream, making a guest appearances from his home in Athens, Georgia. That's my Seeing Red podcast partner. Former Cardinals closer and a great one, Trevor Rosenthal, will be part of the fun. I think Jim Hayes from Cardinals TV was added to the list, and I hope I didn't leave anyone out. But again, if you can't watch it live tonight, 6 to 10, you can catch up on all the action just by going to the Dealing the Cards YouTube channel. And by the way, all proceeds go to Big League Impact. That's one of Adam Wainwright's charitable endeavors. I won't waste too much time telling you about the hat today. I love this one, though. The Memphis Blues, 1969. They were a Texas League farm team for the New York Mets. They won the Texas League championship in 69. Mets won the World Series in 69, so it was a pretty good year. Memphis is one of my favorite cities, and I love this cap. I love what it represents. And among the players on that 69 team that won the Texas League championship, Ken Singleton, who had a distinguished major league career, pitcher Bob Johnson, who was 13-4 with a 1.48 ERA that year. Jim Bibby, you remember Jim Bibby, right? Longtime major league infielder Ted Martinez, and a late friend of mine, Rich Hacker from Belleville, Illinois, who played in the minor leagues for a long time. He played briefly in the majors with Montreal. And as you probably remember, men and women of a certain age, Rich Hacker coached third base for Whitey Herzog during the Whitey Ball era in St. Louis. Rich Hacker, a wonderful man, and he was part, and we miss him, and he was part of that great team down in Memphis in 1969. So shout out to Memphis. I know there's a lot of Cardinals fans down there. All right, let's get through it. Here comes another Bernardo, and I wrote a lot of things out just to try to get through it as quickly as I can. In rejecting that proposed trade to the Houston Astros, perhaps Nolan Arenado saw this as a flashback situation. It reminded him of something that happened in St. Louis, and maybe there's the same potential for this to happen in the Astros, which means, simply he wanted to be in St. Louis because he thought they'd win, and keep up and just never stop winning. And of course, we know what happened there. So he's looking at Houston and he's thinking, could the same thing happen there? I mean, my gosh, they just traded Kyle Tucker. They're not going to sign Alex Bregman to come back at third base. He's going to leave in free agency. I don't know if he trusts that situation. Listen, the Cardinals had a consistent presence on the postseason stage for a very long time. And no wonder why Arenado wanted to be a part of it. That's why he pushed for a trade to get out of Colorado into St. Louis. And make no mistake, St. Louis was the target all along. That's what he focused on. That's what his agent worked on, along with the Rockies and the Cardinals. I know that it meant a lot to Nolan Arenado. The fact that Cardinals chairman Bill DeWitt Jr. got heavily involved in what turned out to be a very lengthy, difficult, complex negotiation. And the deal was basically closed when Bill DeWitt went over all of the financials, which just they had so much to sort through with deferred payments and just in that, getting the Rockies to kick in a lot of money, which they did. And, Bill DeWitt Jr., good friends with the Rockies owner, Charlie Monfort, and they worked it out at the end when it got right down to the nitty gritty. Meant a lot to Arenado that the Cardinals worked so hard to make it happen. And it's easy to understand why he wanted to be a Cardinal, because it's now become fashionable that the Cardinals are like now the Pittsburgh Pirates to some people. They've erased everything that happened over a long period of time. The Cardinals are garbage, sell the team, DeWitt, move the team, that'll be next, move the team, all that stuff. It's as if the Cardinals fans have been suffering for decades or something, right? Cardinals fans have a right to be upset by the way Bill DeWitt and John Mozeliak let this thing decline. But I'm just saying, it could have been avoided and it wasn't avoided, and that's their fault. But, I don't need anybody to sell the team or move it. All right. That's just me. Anyway, people do tend to forget, even people in my profession forget about just how great the Cardinals were for a long time. And it wasn't all that long ago. From the start of the 2000 season to the end of 2020, the Cardinals made it to the postseason 14 times, most by a National League team and second in the majors to the Yankees. From 2000 through 2020, the Cardinals had the most postseason wins by a National League team. They competed in more postseason games than anyone in the National League, and they finished second only to the Yankees for most postseason wins in the majors over that time. Those 14 postseason excursions produced, among other goodies, 4 National League pennants, 2 World Series titles, 10 appearances in the NFL Championship Series. And keep in mind, this is why Arenado desperately wanted to be here. I went through the 2020 season because at that point, the Cardinals were still making the playoffs every year. And the trade that sent him here was right after that 2020 season. So that's why I went from 2000 through 2020. You can see why he wanted to be a Cardinal. And, in his wish to be a Cardinal, Arenado's theme song should have been Meet Me in St. Louis. Now, that's one that he probably wouldn't understand, right? I don't think maybe Judy Garland is probably his jam when he goes to listen to some music, but I digress. It hasn't worked out as well for Arenado as hoped, or for the Cardinals for that matter, but it's mostly the Cardinals' fault. The Cardinals made the playoffs in each of its first 2 seasons, and then the music stopped. In the past 2 seasons, the Cardinals failed to make the postseason. They ranked 22nd in the majors, 22nd, with a .475 winning percentage, and Arenado was unhappy with the losing, and everyone could see that. I don't think anyone should be happy with losing, but Arenado really wore it, right? You could see it, body language and all that. The combination of Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, they were teammates 21 through 24, because Goldie, of course, got here in 2019, but the two of them were teammates, cornerstone teammates, 21 through 24. They did not produce a single postseason victory for St. Louis. It wasn't just their fault, although they didn't do much in those postseason games, only 3. But the Cardinals were 0-3. Neither one of them hit. Had a chance to make a difference, didn't do it. But again, I'm not saying that's all on them. They were a non-contributing factor. I was going to say contributing factor, but they didn't get a lot done. They didn't get really anything done in those 3 postseason losses. The last 2 seasons have been really rough on Arenado. You could see it just by looking at him. Losing is painful for him, and I think we need to visit something on here briefly. Losing is especially painful for him because he went through so much of it in Colorado. From 2013 through the end of 2020, the Rockies had 6 losing seasons. They made the postseason 2 times in the 8 years, and they managed just 1 postseason win. Arenado batted .191 in the postseason with the Rockies. 1 home run, and the team lost 4 out of the 5 games. Losing games, unfortunately for Arenado, has been a big part of his baseball life. This is a team sport, so please keep that in mind when I share this next statistic with you. This is not intended to be an indictment of Arenado, not in a team sport. There are many, 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 many players and managers and coaches that can influence the outcome of a postseason series, right? But if you look at why Arenado is just so terribly frustrated with losing, it takes him back to Colorado. It takes him back even briefly to the fact that in 21 and 22, he had a chance to make a difference in the postseason, and he didn't get it done. And it gnaws at him. Not because he's a weak person, but because he has a lot of pride and he wants to be that big difference maker. That's one of the reasons why he wanted to be in St. Louis. He wanted to be on that big stage. He wanted to kind of reaffirm his greatness as a ball player, and it didn't work out. Here's the stat I'm talking about that I don't want you to take and like smear Arenado with it. Team sport. Remember that. It's not like Wimbledon finals, like singles. All right. It's not the Masters. Team sport. But since the start of the 2013 season, in regular season games started by Arenado for the Rockies and the Cardinals, his teams, when he has started a game, have lost 851 games. That is the most losses by a starting player in the majors over the last 12 seasons. You know who's number 2 on that list? I ain't making this up. Paul Goldschmidt. He's about 6 losses behind Arenado, I guess is the way to put it, but he's got the second most losses since 2013. But again, listen, that's more about their longevity. They've been playing the game a long time in the major leagues. And it's a lot more about the teams that they used to play for in Colorado and Arizona. But here's the problem for Arenado in terms of like what this feels like to lose again after winning in 21 and 22. The Cardinals have taken a turn over the last 2 years. They've kind of been a lot more like those old Rocky and Diamondback teams that suffered so many losses when Goldie and Arenado were starting at first and third base respectively for those teams. Not only has Arenado started in 851 regular season losses during his career, but he's 1-7 in the postseason with a 152 batting average to show for it. He did have a chance, maybe driving a few big runs could have changed things. It didn't happen. That's the fact, and that's the story. This really bugs him, though. He really wants to win. He takes losing hard. He feels guilty when he doesn't do enough to help his team win. And then it kind of snowballs. It puts him in a bad mood. It puts him in a spot where, he's not going to be real happy anyway. But then he doesn't do a good job of kind of staying above it and not let it pull him down. It's pretty obvious that it does just that. So if you look at Arenado as he's viewing Houston, and I alluded to this earlier, the Astros still have the horsepower to win for the next couple of years. They still have a lot of talent. They're going to be getting some pitching back from injuries. They have pretty good depth that way. And it's not like the cupboard is bare. There's a lot in there, but they're not quite as formidable as they were. Not after trading Kyle Tucker, who's got the third most wins above replacement by a major league outfielder behind Judge and Soto since 2021. And then you don't bring back Bregman, which is why they want Arenado, but still, those are 2 pretty big bats and lineup presences to just pull out of there. You don't just kind of roll on after saying bye-bye to both of those guys, right? But it's not like Houston is going to be the dregs. Arenado got used to winning. He was joining, an organization that, again, had made the playoffs all that time. In fact, giving his first 2 years in St. Louis, the Cardinals had made the postseason for 4 straight seasons, 2019 through 22. And that included 21 and 22 when he was there. But the Cardinals failed to put a better team around Arenado for his last 2 seasons there. Now, some of you, I've read it in the comment section, some of you will insist that the Cardinals did nothing like in 2022 to put a better team around Arenado. Look, I've been ripping John Mozeliak a lot for his role in the demise of the Cardinals, but in 2022, he went out and got Jordan Montgomery and Jose Quintana in the at the trade deadline, and in the rest of the way, those guys were terrific. They had a combined ERA of around 250 in 23 starts, and the Cardinals were 17-6 when they started. John Mozeliak made 2 high-impact trades there. They had a hell of a team that year. They didn't hit in the postseason, and they blew game 1 against Philadelphia, as we've talked about a bunch of times. Ain't no need for me to replay that one. Their pitching wasn't the reason why they lost in 21 to the Dodgers in the wild card game. They scored 1 run, and it wasn't the reason why they lost to the Phillies in 2022. The 2-game sweep. They scored, 4 runs? 3 or 4 runs in those 2 games? So the Cardinals had the horses to win, or at least make a big postseason run in 2022. But, and again, this is where people lose credibility when they won't acknowledge, like, for example, that the 2022 team in many ways was really outstanding. You had that terrific season by Pujols. You had Arenado leading the National League in wins above replacement. You had Goldie winning the MVP, Arenado finishing 3rd. You had really good years from a lot of their young players. You had the final year of Yadier Molina. It was Adam Wainwright's last good year as a good pitcher. Helsley was strong. All in all, this is a team that should have been able to make a deep postseason run. So that's why I get a little irritated when, I know John Mozeliak screwed up a lot of things. I'm hardly his defender. But they did have a chance to go a long way in 2022. If you want to complain about John Mozeliak as it pertains to Nolan Arenado, it's that they didn't do nearly enough before the 2023 season. They got Wilson Contreras, signed him to $87.5 million deal. And what did they do? They immediately threw him under the bus and did terrible damage to the guy, all because he wasn't Yadier Molina, as if playing in the same division all those years didn't give John Mozeliak and his assistants a really great idea of what to expect from Wilson Contreras behind the plate. Like, it was a surprise he wasn't Yadier Molina, arguably one of the top 2 or 3 defensive catchers in the history of the game. Wait a minute, he's not Yadi. Let's throw him under the bus. So we give the pitchers an excuse. Shameful. And unfortunately, there's still Cardinals fans, because I hear from you, who just like to kick Contreras every time they get a chance. There's a lot of Cardinals fans. Most of them, I think, like him a lot. But what did they do? Let me get to I made some notes here. What did they do exactly as far as coming up with a better team before 23, right? Well, they messed up the Contreras thing. It would have been okay if they understood what they were getting in him as a catcher and they didn't overreact to the fact that he wasn't Yadi, all right? That's on them. That's not on Contreras. They stayed with the same lineup other than adding Contreras. I mean, Goldie and Arenado were still there. Edman was playing shortstop. Nootbaar was in the lineup. Gorman was in the lineup. Donovan, O'Neill, Carlson. They added Jordan Walker, not from the outside, but they promoted him to the majors probably a year too soon. They gave more at-bats to Paul DeYoung. They gave more at-bats to Alec Burleson. But there weren't, other than the Contreras move from the outside, there weren't any major upgrades to try to stimulate that offense, right? There was no major bench upgrades whatsoever before 2023. Adam Wainwright wanted to pitch one more year, and he'd be the first to acknowledge this, he was brutal in 2023. And the Cardinals, they were still trying to see if Jack Flaherty would return to form. still saying, well, we think Steven Matz will be healthy. Hey, we think Dakota Hudson's going to be really special. Hey, we like Zach Thompson. Hey, Miles Michaelis, look at what he did. And actually, in 2022, Michaelis had a fine ERA. Helsley was the closer in 2022, but only, or in 2023, pardon me, but only for 33 games because he had a forearm strain and he was on the shelf a long time. And then you look at their bullpen. Listen, I think that some of those guys were decent. You know, Jojo Romero was decent. Chris Stratton was decent, but they had a lot of traveling men. They had a lot of nomads just coming through who weren't very good. If you look at that, go to Baseball Reference and look at the bullpen in 2023, right? So they stayed pretty much with the same team and they paid for it. They never got better. They got worse in 2023. And then in 2024, they were rushing out and it was, oh, we got to go buy some pitching. And they bought Gray and Lynn and Gibson. But again, did they do anything to upgrade the lineup? No. What they did was bring in two aging uncles, Matt Carpenter and Brandon Crawford, to be leaders. And you know why they needed them to be leaders? Because Arenado complained there were too many young kids running around in 2023. See, Molina and Pujols protected Arenado and they protected Goldie. Goldie's and Arenado do not want to be proactive leaders. They don't want everything to come through them. They don't want to be the ones that take charge of the clubhouse. They don't have to, but I'm saying they don't want to. Let's just acknowledge that instead of being wimps, okay? But with those guys gone into retirement, all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess this is Goldie and Arenado's team now. And they were kind of like, you know? So it kind of exposed some things there. But a lot of it had to do with the Cardinals just not reading the room correctly. And they thought that somehow Carpenter, and I love him, but still, and Brandon Crawford are going to come in there and just be the leaders of the pack. And everyone's going to be looking to them when they're hardly even playing. All right. Enough about that. And whatever happened to Drew Verhagen, by the way? Talking about nomads. Anyway, here, let's get down to the nitty gritty on this. And I apologize. Let me go because I got to go through my papers again. I am organized, but sometimes when I start throwing papers around as I'm doing this, you know, things happen. Things happen. All right, back to business. So after the Cardinals made the playoffs in 4 straight seasons, including his first 2, then they have been under 500 over the last 2 years. And that's because really the front office has a lot to do with that for their inactivity or their bad decisions before 23 and 2024. Didn't do enough before 2024, although they did end up winning 83 games. So what? Didn't make the playoffs. So I'm pretty sure this went against what Nolan Arenado was led to believe when he had a chance to opt out of his contract after the 2022 season, when he was one of the best baseball players on planet Earth. You remember that he had a chance because, man, we were all sweating that out, right? It almost seems funny now, but we were sweating that out. Oh my gosh, he's going to opt out. He's coming off a career best year, which according to OPS Plus, it was. Boy, he can reopen this and he'll get paid even more money and probably get the Dodgers and a West Coast team, and he'll get all these teams after him. The Cardinals won't be able to keep him. So John Mozeliak flew out to the LA area to meet with Arenado after the end of the 2022 season, and they had a conversation. And you can't help but think that Mozeliak told some things that gave Arenado some assurance that they would continue to try to get better and better and better. They would do what it would take to get him and Paul Goldschmidt closer and closer to their dream, which is a long postseason run and a chance to win a World Series. And so if Arenado's feeling let down, if he's feeling like he was misled by John Mozeliak, maybe that explains why he ain't in the mood to help out Mo with favors by waiving his no trade protection. And he has strong, totally authoritative no trade protection, and he should use it as he sees fit. I had some guy in here last night giving me a hard time saying, well, you can use all your fancy pants stats all you want, but he's got a no trade contract. You got to understand that. How many times yesterday in that 30-minute plus video did I mention that Nolan Arenado has got a no trade contract? And I said it 20,000 times. And I said I supported him and I don't blame him for utilizing it. But yet, we live in the short attention span theater. Welcome. I give up sometimes, but at least I laugh about it, right? So let's all be clear. He's got a strong, unbreakable no trade contract. He can use it as he sees fit because the Cardinals agreed to it. Everyone agreed to it. He should do with that whatever he wants to do with that, period. I don't shame him for using his no trade rights. Okay. Now do we understand each other perfectly clear? I hope. Thank you. I will now lighten up. But if you don't trust Mozeliak, and if you dislike Mozeliak, well, would you really blame Nolan Arenado for feeling the same way after their little meeting before Arenado was going to decide on whether to opt out of the Cardinals deal and reopen himself to free agency? It would have been really easy and simple for him to do because his value at that time was skyrocketing. But Arenado made a really quick decision to stay with the Cardinals. In fact, after he met with Mozeliak, shortly after that, he had his answer about the no trade, the opt-out possibility. He had his answer, and he let Mo know, I'm staying. I don't want to be anywhere else. I'm staying. This is what John Mozeliak told media about that meeting that he had with Arenado before Arenado's decision on the opt-out. Quote, he asked questions on how we're thinking about the club and what we're thinking about the future, and topics like, how are we going to deploy our resources? It was a very positive conversation. Yeah, it was a very positive conversation that probably blatantly misled Nolan Arenado in terms of what actually happened after that. Again, what did they do after 2022? The Contreras thing brought up Jordan Walker, really didn't do anything to upgrade the team, not even the bench. And then they had to rush out and buy, mid-level starting pitching just to have a chance to do anything, to not repeat a 20 games under 500 season. So if you're Arenado, wouldn't you be a little peeved that you were told one thing and they didn't follow up on it? In fact, they went the other way because I think payroll went down too, right? Anyway, we all know what happened after Arenado's high level in terms of performance in 2022. The next two seasons, 154 wins and 170 losses for Arenado and the Cardinals. They finished 13 games out of the NL's third wild card in 2023. They fell out of contention after the trade deadline last year, finished 6 games out of the third wild card by the end of the season. So if you try to look at it this way, and you can understand why Arenado is making sure to look out for himself this time. Houston isn't heading for a collapse, but a downturn is, in fact, likely. Arenado probably lacks trust with the Cardinals in terms of the people running the thing, at least through the end of the next season. He sees the Astros trade Kyle Tucker, decline to pay Alex Bregman what he wants to stay. And I'm guessing Arenado, in addition to not entirely trusting the Cardinals, probably doesn't trust the situation in Houston because, everyone's telling him, oh, no, the Astros are still strong. All the Astros have a lot of talent. They're still good. They still want to win. And isn't that what Mozeliak kind of told Arenado, right, after 2022? In persuading him to stay here. Not that he needed a lot of persuasion. I think he really wanted to stay here. So I can understand to an extent, for sure, Arenado's anxiety about going through another St. Louis style fade after falling for another bait and switch that he fell for with the Cardinals back after the 2022 season. So I got an itchy nose. That's all this hollering, I think. Does Arenado really know what he wants? You think he'd want to get away from the Cardinals as the organization enters a transition that's going to include less revenue, less star power, more reliance on young and unproven players, a smaller payroll, a restructured baseball operations department, going to have a new boss after next season. No one knows how this is going to turn out for the Cardinals. We absolutely have no idea. It could go well. It could go poorly. So as long as Arenado has the no trade protection, he's going to try to control as much authority over the situation as he possibly can in order to get to where he really wants to be, even if the Dodgers say no and the Padres don't have payroll space. But he'd rather still try to control the decision rather than have the Cardinals make it for him. Listen, I haven't changed this. They got to get him out of here. We've talked all about the reasons why. They want to play Nolan Gorman at third base. They want Thomas Saggese to play second base. And if Arenado's still around, well, he not only blocks Gorman from playing third base, Gorman goes back to second, then that means there's less of an opportunity for Saggese and others at second base, right? So that's why this is such a bad situation potentially. How and I think I said this yesterday, pardon me for stealing my own material, but how does the so-called youth movement get moving when Arenado won't move? I asked that for 2 days in a row. Listen, I think we'll get there. It's taken longer than anticipated. Perhaps Arenado can use this muscle with the no trade clause to get the trade he wants, or one that he likes a lot better. Maybe he ultimately decides Houston ain't so bad after all. But if he vetoes what the Cardinals bring to him over and over and over again, then there's a chance the situation could get real ugly real soon. As I explained in yesterday's Bernardo video, Arenado's got leverage in the no trade card. There's no doubt about it. He's got the leverage with that no trade card. The Cardinals have the leverage. They have the leverage in the lineup card. It really is true. Let's not pretend the Cardinals have no leverage at all. It's just, do they want to go that far and use it? They don't have to use him as their regular starter at third base. They don't have to play him 150 games, 145 games. If he's still around in 2025, they really don't have to. He can be a spot starter. He can serve as a late inning defensive replacement to protect leads. He can come off the bench as a pinch hitter. And for those of you who say, well, wait a minute, Bernie, this is a little rash, isn't it? I mean, I know he's no longer slugging 500, but my goodness, he's still a useful player offensively. That depends on whose opinion is stating that. Me with the numbers, I'm a devil. In his last 205 games, this goes back to near the All-Star break of 2023. Nolan Arenado's slugging percentage, which is about 381, okay? It's 1 point higher over the same number of games, 1 point higher than Paul DeYoung's slugging percentage. And I'd say 75% of you couldn't wait for Paul DeYoung to either get put on the bench and never have to look at him again, or just get him out of here, even if you have to pay somebody a fortune to take him. Y'all couldn't stand Paul DeYoung. And I think some people are saying, Arenado's a little better than you say, Bernie, offensively. No, he isn't. His power game is to the level of Paul DeYoung, okay? And that's a fact over the last 205 games or so. So they could, if it comes to this, they could scale back on Arenado's playing time. They don't have to make him the regular starter. He could play. Oh, and since he wants to play first base, remember he volunteered that? Well, they can work him in there a little bit. Maybe Contreras gets hurt or something. Maybe they decide, well, we're going to keep Burleson out in left field or whatever it may be. Arenado can shift over to first base if he wants to play more on days when Contreras needs a rest or he's hurting a little bit or whatever it may be. My point is, they don't have to start him for 140 plus games. All right. It still would not be an ideal situation. Chances are it'd be a really testy situation. I know one person said, well, listen, you could platoon him, right? You let him start against right-handed, or excuse me, you let Arenado, who bats right-handed, of course, you let him start against left-handed pitching. That would get him some playing time. Well, there's a problem with that. It's not a bad idea because I thought the same until I remembered, well, wait a minute. I think he's been pretty bad against lefty pitching for a while. His first 2 years, he crushed lefty pitching here in St. Louis. You know what he's done the last 2 seasons against left-handed pitching, starters and relievers? 227 batting average with a 654 OPS, which is awful. And this is just another part of Arenado's decline in his hitting profile that's imploding. He can't hit lefties anymore. So will the Cardinals actually go ahead and play hardball with Arenado if he continues to exercise his contractual right to veto trades? This would certainly cause a hullabaloo if they did play hardball. It would hurt the Cardinals' reputation with agents and players. The Major League Baseball Players Association would go into a frenzy. Probably be grievances filed and everything else. But wait a minute. The Cardinals can play anybody they want to play. They have the right to fill in the lineup card as they see fit. And it's not like this is a surprise. Like where Arenado, all of a sudden, it's like they told him, "Oh no, we're keeping you. You're an important part of our club. We're not even going to try to trade you this offseason." It's not like they said that. They went to him before last season ended and said it was their desire to trade him if it's the right thing that makes sense for everybody. And Arenado said, "Well, go ahead. I'm willing to see what you come up with." So he can't say that they've misled him, because if they decide, well, he didn't want to go anywhere and we have him, he's going to be on our team and he will play, but he's not going to play as much as he wants to, and he's going to have to accept that. They've been upfront with their plans. This would not be a bait and switch because they tried to trade him. They're trying to trade him, and he can control whether they trade him or not. If he don't want to be traded, to me, the authority and the leverage goes to the Cardinals because they then can decide to do whatever the hell they want to do with their lineup, especially in a transitional, let's go with the kids year, right? One other thing about this, and I'm sorry to laugh because it really wouldn't be a lot of fun. Can you imagine Oli Marmol, the manager, having to deal with a miserable bench-sitting Arenado? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine Arenado hits a ground ball and he kind of just takes his time down the line? Can you imagine Marmol? Nato, you got a minute? These young kids are watching you. You got a minute. Listen, man, you got to run down first base. You got to run after you hit a ground ball. It looks bad, and these kids are looking at you, right? Arenado's response would probably be, I can't say it. It would probably be along the likes, well, dude, you got 3 seconds to get out of my face, or I'm going to break something in your body. So this would be quite the adventure for Oli Marmol to have to deal with that if they decide, well, Nolan Arenado is our defensive replacement, and we're going to spot him some starts here and there. I don't believe anything. I don't believe it's going to come to this, but it's best for everyone to make a deal. I think a deal will be struck. But if the Cardinals want to use it, let's not sit here and act like they do not have leverage. They do have leverage, but it's one of those deals is like, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to escalate the battle? Why do these things only seem to happen to John Mozeliak? I'll leave you with that, and I'll say goodbye, and thank you very much for watching The Bernie Show. This is the end of today's Bernardo. Have a good one.